Yeah, this is a quick video. This guy should be knighted, and he's just been making mention that there's 6,000 dead in the UK. The Prime Minister of the UK, Boris Johnson's. This is the point I want to make. Doubling in the last 4 days and doubled in the 3 days before this. So therefore the curve not as steep. So potentially 10,000 deaths by the weekend. Okay, let's see if we can turn this around and do a video. Right. So I remember just physics. I was doing some fishing for catfish in the Taupo Lake. Anyway, a mate of mine, Chris, and myself, we were up there learning how to trout fish. He had the license and that sort of thing, and he goes up, stays at a timeshare in the Taupo area. Anyway, I'd already done the background work on catching these catfish with the Department of Conservation and Harbour Master and the iwi and stuff, so I had a special dispensation to go down and catch these catfish. So I went down there, said, and I've never caught one before. Anyway, there was this young fella there with his dad, and we were fishing, and Chris and his dad were having a bit of a chat down there. So I said to this young fella, because in the physics side of things, and I was explaining to him you have the displacement, which is, and then with respect to time, displacement creates what's called velocity. It's a vector unit, so it has direction and it has a quantity. So velocity is displacement with respect to time, or distance with respect to time. And then if you have velocity and then that velocity changes, so you start off at 10 kilometers an hour and you go to 100 kilometers an hour over a period of time, you need to accelerate. So there's a formula, acceleration equals force times mass. But the point is, on from acceleration, there's a thing called the change in acceleration with respect to time, and there's a technical term for that, and it's called a jerk, J-E-R-K. And so when you're fishing, you actually get a bite from a fish and you have to jerk the line, which is a very, and the line bends and then goes like this, and that's what puts the hook into the mouth of the fish, and once you've hooked it with the barb, it can't come out, and then you reel it in. So in fishing, it's not just pulling it, which is acceleration, and yeah. So anyway, I'm not going to go into it more than that, but what I just showed you with the Johnson guy, and so he was just mentioning that the rate of deaths from 3 days, 700, almost 1,000 die, but then it was 4 days now for 1,000 to die. Let's just say it's 1,000 dying in 4 days, and then, but the last 3 days 1,000 died. So that's the curve, and you might think when you're in the hospital, oh my gosh, 1,000 people died, and then another 1,000 people died, and it's, but from a perspective of looking at the long-term trends, and I'm a demographer, birth rates, death rates, migration rates of human population. So one of the things is if, for example, breastfeeding, if a woman breastfeeds for 2 years and doesn't supplement it with food, but just solidly breastfeeds, the human body will, it's a natural contraceptive. If you supplement or bottle feed the baby, then of course you can get pregnant from that. But if you're turning into the most skinny, waif and stray, and you've got a baby on your arm and you're just breastfeeding, boom, it's a natural contraceptive for about 2 years, and then after that it doesn't. So those trends are seen, and you need about 30,000 breastfeeding women to actually see that trend, because there's always, I was breastfeeding and I got pregnant sort of thing. So but over 30,000 people, you'll see that trend of, if you breastfeed, it's a natural contraceptive. Now, getting back to the death rate of COVID in the UK, it's going from 3 days per 1,000 dying, and I'm just making it 1,000. It's less than that, and then it's 4 days, and then obviously they're going to come out and say it's been a week since we've had 1,000 deaths, and then it's going to be a month for 500 deaths, so it goes down. So the whole thing with respect to time, and I think it's interesting to know, and I could show you on a graph and bits and pieces, but just from the fishing perspective. So the jerk, which is the accelerating boom happening, applies in the sense of this graph. So from my perspective, the UK is over the jerk of this virus, and it would be lovely as a scientist, as a Bachelor of Science, done some postgrad study in demography, that this term, the jerk, which is an interesting term in the sense, because a jerk is, in colloquial terms in the English language, is a person who is upsetting to others. Don't be a jerk is the saying. I'm not going to go into what I think requires explanation on that sense, but I'll just let you know that don't be a jerk is a colloquial term that is used out there. So, long story short, UK's over the jerk. In New Zealand, we've got 63 cases in Matamata, and it's in an old folks home. And what we used to have is a statistic that 99% of the cases of COVID were from overseas travellers, and 1% was what's called community passing it on. Well, that's since changed just like that. They've shut the borders, so no more are we having that 99%. So what it is now is 25% is from overseas, and of the new cases, 75% is in the workplace. So in the workplace is probably, obviously they're talking about this old folks home where the staff are passing it on to each other, and they're catching it from their clients, and then, well, they actually, first of all, the staff gave it to the old people, then the old people harboured it and then gave it back to the staff, and now they're spreading them around to like different hospitals, and then they're giving them to nurses and doctors and stuff. And so in New Zealand, we've got a small number, and New Zealand is grappling with containing it, but it's not in the sense of what New York City and that sort of thing is, and we'll get on top of it, but I'm just letting you know. So I live, less than, 50 kilometres sort of thing from Matamata. It might be a little bit further, a little bit less, but I'm just letting you know that I'm speaking to you, and that's in a hotspot because the government knows where the hotspots are, down in Bluff and this old folks home, and there's another place, Marist, some school which had some visitors and stuff that started off, and we're talking maximum of under 100, but the three places, and the government is focusing all its resources on stopping it getting out from there. So we're locking down in the rest of the country, and that's a good thing in the sense of if it has spread from those places, or maybe there's a tourist that's coming and they're zooming around or hiding and stuff, and so they might be locked down at the moment, but they become sick over the next 2 weeks. We've had 2 weeks of lockdown, 14 days, and we've got another, say, 5 weeks in total, another 3 weeks. So long story short, what we're doing is good. We're going to flush out where the virus is, because people will either die from it or have it, and you need about the third passing on, and that's why we're having our bits and pieces here. There might be a little bit that goes through the supermarkets and stuff, and buying, social distancing and that sort of thing, and people staying away, using up all their resources in their home before they go to the supermarket. People are getting really smart, and it's that whole jerk situation. As the deaths increase, people will become more and more extreme in social isolating. Okay, so that's the end of this video. All I wanted to do was just explain the physics concept of displacement, velocity, acceleration, and jerk, which is an official term, but it's not really used. But it's important that UK's over the jerk. Obviously, New Zealand's over that jerk as well, and America seems to be over it. The rest of the world's going to go through it shortly. Okay, that's the end of the video. Bye-bye.